What's up everyone, it's a Knife Side here, and today I'm going to be doing my full review on the SPK Sasquatch. And this is a knife from Alex Steingraber. SPK stands for Steingraber Performance Knives, and he is a custom knife maker that emphasizes heat treat and thin geometry on his knives. And if you guys know me, if you watch my channel, you know that's something I really appreciate and really enjoy. So that is ultimately why I picked up this knife. And you also might be curious why, if you keep up with the channel, why it's taken so long for me to do a video on this. And the reasoning behind that is this is a knife, like I said, that really emphasizes blade or performance of the steel. And so I felt like I wouldn't be doing it justice if I just carried it for a couple weeks and then reviewed it. So I've gotten a couple months of carry, a lot of use on this, and a couple sharpenings on it. So I feel like I've done enough to be able to do my full review with this. So let's go over it. Let's get into it. Let's start out with the looks of this. Overall, it is a good looking knife. I like this OD green micarta. I think it looks nice. Like the black hardware that contrasts good with the laser etch here. By the way, mine is in CPM M4 at about 65 to 66 HRC. And yeah, so that's about all it for the looks. Here's the sheath. It's like a bright yellow sheath. I think it looks kind of cool, contrasting with the dark handle, and you don't really see the sheath on me. I don't just like carry this out to the side like some people do, and so not an issue to me at all. Now let's talk about the blade, the money maker of this knife. So why is it important to have a knife that's thin behind the edge, and why is it important to have a knife at such a high HRC? And that's something that a lot of times there are a whole lot of myths surrounding this subject that usually come in from, like, you know, it always seems like it's like knife retailers or just companies that don't know all that much about heat treating and the benefits of a good heat treat. But, you know, a lot of times, I know I started this way, I was misled. A lot of people say, okay, these softer steels, they're not going to chip or not going to roll as easy, but these harder steels, they are going to chip and roll easier. Or they're mainly just going to chip easier, but they have a better edge retention to them. And while that makes sense, it's actually not the case when it comes to a lot of these, or when it comes to knives at higher HRC, because what they're measuring with that is they're measuring the toughness of the steel. And the toughness of these steels is not tested with a knife blade, with a sharpened edge hitting it into something, comparing like a soft steel to a hard steel. It's usually taking a big slab or just a slab of steel and bending it until it will, what's the term? Is it plastically deformed, like a plastic deformation? I don't really know what the term is, but basically bend it so much that it won't go back to its original shape. And a softer steel will obviously bend more than a harder steel, then a harder steel will break easier. And so that's why a lot of people think, oh, harder steels aren't as tough because as soft steels, and so therefore harder steels are chippier. And that does apply to us. If I stabbed this knife at 65 to 66 HRC and then the same knife at 62 HRC into a tree and went like that, the knife at 62 has a better chance of surviving, but I'm not doing that with my knife, so that is not important. How edge or how heat treat can positively benefit the edge stability of this, so the actual ability to take damage or to resist taking damage at the edge. That's what I'm going to call edge stability. And the reason that these high HRC steels are actually better than your softer steels is because they have a finer grain structure that is achieved through the heat treat process to get them at this higher HRC. And so the grain structure, I don't want to go into all of it, but basically when you heat treat a knife to a higher HRC, it is obviously cooking at a higher temperature, I guess you could call it. And what that does is there is softer steel in here. I think it's called austenitized steel or something. I'm not good with the terms on it. But basically, you're trying to get that out of there. And then once you heat it up enough, it does get out of there or whatever, or it's not super soft. And what can happen with your softer steels is that soft steel is still in there. So let's say it's at the edge and you cut something with it, then you see a chip in your knife. That could be the softer steel just kind of breaking off really easily there. So when it has this fine grain structure achieved at a high HRC, it is a lot easier to sharpen. It strops up also easier, and it is able to take more it's able to resist more damage at the edge, and so that is why I really like high HRC steels. Also, the obvious advantage is the edge retention. If you guys watch Super Steel Steve, which I watch a whole lot of him, I think that HRC really plays a huge role when it comes to edge retention, especially that fine edge, like that hair shaving edge, because I feel like you'll see budget steels on his channel like Oz 8 compared to S90V do similar when they're at similar HRCs. Now the working edge, that is usually where you see some variance based on the composition and also many other reasons. Don't want to act like I know everything here, but the HRC is really what is important with the fine edge retention holding, and so that's why higher HRC steels perform better than softer ones. Also, higher HRC steels sharpen better than softer ones. It's one of those things that you just gotta try it out yourself. Sharpening a knife like this compared to sharpening a knife in buttery soft M390, it's just two different worlds. With those softer steels, it's very hard to deburr. Usually a burr is like a wire edge that kind of folds over the knife apex when you're sharpening it, and you have to get that burr off there in order to apex it and get it sharp. When you have a softer steel, that burr just kind of flips back and forth. You know, it's not very soft, so it's hard to shed it off the apex of the knife. And so that is why softer steels are harder to sharpen and take more time, because it's more difficult to get that burr off. Steels like this, they're so hard and so thin that they sharpen up so easy that burr pretty much falls off. I can deburr this off a 600 grit diamond stone, and really you can't really ask for much more with that. It is just very easy to sharpen and very enjoyable to sharpen. And a lot of people look at a knife like this and are probably like, oh my goodness, that's probably so hard to sharpen. It's one of the easier knives I own to sharpen, partially because it's so thin, but steels that are at this high HRC, like I said, they deburr very easy, and the only thing that could technically take longer is, since they are more wear resistant, you would spend more time like forming that burr on the stone than you would on a softer steel, but it's something that if you have like a 600 grit diamond stone, you're not going to notice at all. And so this steel, very easy to sharpen. Actually, just before, a couple days ago, before I sat down to do this review, I haven't been trying to review this for 2 days, but I don't know why I worded it like that, but I had a 600 grit diamond stone. This edge wasn't hair shaving, and then I just held it in my hand, went like that for a little bit, and then just got any remaining burr off, which there wasn't much on there, and then I just stropped it, and probably under like 3 minutes, I had a screaming sharp edge all ready to go again. And so this knife, it's very easy to sharpen, very enjoyable to sharpen, and overall just enjoyable to use. So why is it enjoyable to use? Well, here is a reason. It is extremely thin behind the edge. Like I said, Alex Steingraber really promotes thinness behind the edge. So we look at that. So I just measured 10 thousandths, okay, 11 thousandths, 12 thousandths behind the edge. Let me make sure that's right. We're looking 13. Let me get more behind that edge here. 10. All right, so about 10 thousandths behind the edge. I've measured this knife a lot, just because it always kind of amazes me, and I'm always at that 10 or 11 thousandths behind the edge mark, and it also has a thin stock on this, and so this knife cuts extremely well. If you look at this bevel, this is probably at like 15 degrees per side that I sharpened it at, and this Spidey Chef here is also at about 15 degrees per side. So you just see the bevel difference. This is much thicker, and so it's just so thin that it's an extremely small bevel. And that thinness behind the edge just makes it pass through material so much better. If you haven't used a knife this thin, you gotta try it. It makes like cardboard fun to cut, which a lot of people probably don't think cardboard's that fun to cut, but with a knife this thin, it's really fun to use. It's really enjoyable. So yeah, overall, the performance of this knife, it's perfect. The potential of this blade, in my opinion, is pretty much maxed out. I like the blade shape as well. And yeah, overall, really, really good thumbs up for the execution of this blade. Also, M4 is an awesome steel. one of my favorites. I have a whole lot of production knives in M4. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but I might have mentioned this. I don't know. But Benchmade and Spyderco, I looked it up, and their M4 is usually around that 62 to 64 mark. So this is 65 to 66, so it's a step above that. And that might not seem like a lot, but when it comes to heat treating, usually a steel, you're only seeing a variance of maybe 3 Rockwell points. But when you see 62 versus 66 on a knife like this, that's when you can really tell a huge difference in the performance. Oh, and yeah, I already mentioned. All right, I think that's all I got to say about the blade. Let's move on to the rest of the knife. So fit and finish on this is pretty good. The only thing I have noticed is, as you can see, this handle, like it's shadow box, so the blade sticks out a little bit more. I think it gives it a really good look. But if you'll look up here, the handle actually sticks up a little bit more than the blade. You can hear me catch my nail on there. It's not sharp, but I mean, it does stick up a little bit more. So I think maybe like a piece of tooling went dull when cutting this, or the program, the CNC program or whatever, wasn't completely accurate to be able to fit it correctly. But that doesn't really bother me all that much. I could honestly fix that with some sandpaper. And that's about it for fit and finish. For the ergos on this, very good. It has very thick micarta handle scales, and that really fills the hand nicely. This does not feel like a small EDC fixed blade in your hand. It feels like a full-size knife, and you can do a whole lot of cutting with it. And that edge geometry mixed with these ergos really makes it just very nice to use and a very good performer. Let's talk about the carry of this. So this kind of mainly been my downside with this. It's not a downside with the knife, it's just me, I guess. But carrying a fixed blade has been kind of difficult for me. I still have yet to figure out like the perfect way for me to carry it. And right now the best way that I found is just dropping it in my pocket and carrying it like that. Now if I'm carrying like something else in my pocket, it's kind of annoying because it's moving around, hitting on the other thing. Usually it's like my wallet. But if I have another separate pocket I could put my wallet in, carrying this just in the pocket works very well, and I'm fine with that. I have the tech lock on here. I'm still getting used. Actually, it's an ulti clip. I don't know why I called it a tech lock, but the ulti clip, it works fine. Still, I don't know if it's my thing, but I'm just kind of trying it out here. I tried the belt loop that comes with this knife, and the only real comfortable spot I could find that where this knife wouldn't like print was in the back, and I didn't really like resheathing the knife in a holster in my back because I felt like, oh, I can't see it, so I might poke myself or something like that. I don't know, but I'm still trying to figure out how I should carry this. Let me know how you carry your fixed blades down below. Maybe I'll try it out. All right, that's really all I got for this. Let's talk about the value. So we're looking at about $250 for this knife, and in my opinion, that value is really good. If you look at other fixed blades, like other production fixed blades out there on the market, the difference between production fixed blades and custom ones aren't that different for the amount of extra attention to detail that goes into these knives, and the extra, like obviously the heat treating process, how thin they're ground compared to these knives. I believe there are also excellent fixed blades out there for cheaper prices, like production fixed blades like SCs and stuff. But for your average knife enthusiast, $250 for this is a very good price, especially for how good of a processing you are getting on the steel. So I think that is really cool. Anything else today? Nope, I think that's it. Overall, I really enjoy this knife. This blade is pretty much perfect, and so I've really enjoyed using this, carrying this, and it's overall just a fun knife to use. But that's all I got today. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.